This is the banned kids show Iceberg. Tier 1. It's a Dog's Life from Ren and Stimpy. Ren and Stimpy always had a reputation for pushing boundaries, but this episode went so far that even longtime fans were stunned. We're talking about the lost episode from Season 4, Episode 12, titled It's a Dog's Life. If you missed the 90s, Ren and Stimpy were the punk rock of cartoons. It was ugly, loud, and obsessed with bodily fluids. But this specific episode crossed the line from gross to psychological torture. The episode begins in a way no kids' cartoon ever should. Ren, a tiny chihuahua, and Stimpy, his clueless cat friend, are literally on death row at an animal pound. They're chained up, marched down a hallway, and about to be put in a gas chamber. Right before the switch is pulled, the wealthy old woman appears and rescues them. She brings them home in a limo and gives them fancy new names. Ren becomes Abraham, while Stimpy becomes Leviticus. She treats them like purebred pets. For a moment, everything seems perfect, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. Soon after their arrival, Ren spots what he thinks is a sleeping dog in a basket. When he pokes it, the animal crumbles into dust. It wasn't asleep, it was stuffed, and from there, everything spirals. The granny insists they act like proper dogs, and every mistake earns a punishment. When Stimpy accidentally damages her couch, her giant stone-faced butler, Mr. O, walks in and snaps his limbs. Dinner is even worse. She serves them gravel, which shatters Ren's teeth. Whenever they cry out in pain, she simply hoses them down, convinced they're being naughty. Later, she takes them to a clinic to have them neutered. At night, she locks them outside in a graveyard, leaving them surrounded by tombstones and creepy ambient sounds. Terrified, Ren and Stimpy eventually try to run away, but a police officer catches them and gives them a horrific choice: return to the granny or go back to the pound to be executed. They choose the granny. When they get back, the story hits its final disturbing turn. The old woman is lying on the floor, dead from lead poisoning. Her butler quietly inherits everything she owned, including the pets. Then, the episode cuts to its chilling ending. Ren and Stimpy have been taxidermied. They're mounted in her mansion, while the butler casually dusts their lifeless bodies like furniture. Yes, the main characters die and end the episode as stuffed decorations. It's obvious why Nickelodeon pulled the episode quickly. Even MTV refused to show it for years. When it did return on Nicktoons, complaints rolled in, and the network pulled it again. Mr. Ratburn and the special someone from Arthur. It took just one episode of this long-running PBS show to get an entire state to pull it off the air. Before the trouble started, Arthur was the PBS golden child. A polite cartoon about an aardvark in glasses that has been teaching toddlers about sharing, reading, and emotional intelligence since 1996. You'd think after 20-plus seasons, nothing from the show could possibly cause outrage. But you'd be wrong. In 2019, Season 22, Episode 1 dropped, and the state of Alabama decided it was a menace to society. The episode's called Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone. The plot kicks off when Arthur and his friends overhear that their teacher, Mr. Ratburn, is getting married. They catch bits of a phone call about someone named Patty and instantly assumes that she's a bridezilla who'll turn their fun teacher into a homework assigning dictator. Instead of, asking, they decide to intervene. They spy on him at a dinner, edit together a fake laid-back video to help him find love with someone else, and even write a cheesy love poem full of typos. After that, they try to set him up with a random librarian. They even try to sweeten the deal by bribing her with high-end truffles they bought from a chill, friendly chocolatier named Patrick. The plan fails miserably because, surprisingly, you cannot force a government employee to date your teacher just because you gave her fancy candy. Then comes the big twist. The kids crash the wedding ready to object, only to realize they got everything wrong. Mr. Ratburn really is getting married, but Patty isn't the bride. She's his sister. The person standing at the altar is Patrick. Yes, the nice guy who sold him the bribe candy earlier. Mr. Ratburn is marrying a guy. There was no dramatic reveal, no rainbow flags, and no monologue about acceptance. Just a wedding scene. A quick kiss, a smile, and the core group of friends watching in surprise. Francine, the group's resident athlete and skeptic, breaks the tension by admitting the whole thing is actually kind of romantic. The show producers thought it was all harmless entertainment, but not everyone agreed. Alabama Public Television refused to air the episode, saying they didn't want to expose children to gay marriage. Instead, they replaced it with a rerun of an older episode and hoped no one would notice. And well, people noticed. Advocacy groups like GLAAD immediately called the move mean-spirited censorship, pointing out that public TV is supposed to represent all families, not just the ones lawmakers are comfortable with. The internet picked up the story and it spread fast. Reddit threads broke down the situation. Twitter called it the dumbest controversy of 2019. And conservative groups like 1 Million Moms launched petitions accusing PBS of promoting same-sex marriage. Even former Trump advisor Sebastian Gorka joined in calling it proof of a culture war. The funniest part of all of this is that the episode itself makes zero deal out of it. The wedding is just the background event for the kids realizing their teacher has a life. Dad Baby from Bluey. Disney is famous for locking controversial content in the vault. Usually that means old cartoons with outdated stereotypes. But recently, they applied that same treatment to a 7-minute clip of a dog in a kiddie pool. If you've never seen Bluey, the first thing you need to know is that it's Australia's most beloved preschool show. It's centered on a dog family that turns everyday moments into heartfelt adventures. Parents love putting on the show for their kids because it feels like real family life. It's messy, funny, emotional, and sometimes a little too accurate. But then we arrive at Season 2, Episode 13, titled Dad Baby. It kicks off with Bandit, the dad, deciding to play a game where he's the one having a baby. He slips his younger daughter, Bingo, into a baby carrier hidden under his shirt, making himself look pregnant. It was supposed to be a silly family roleplay, but Bandit takes it way too seriously. He starts acting like an expectant parent, waddling through the house, groaning about back pain, and demanding weird food combinations like pickles dipped in vanilla ice cream. His kids, Bluey and Bingo, go along with it completely, turning their living room into a full-on delivery ward. They even set up a kiddie pool in the backyard. When it's time to deliver, the baby Bluey grabs a toy stethoscope and shouts, "Push, Daddy," while the family's neighbor, Pat, shows up to offer encouragement. After a few over-the-top grunts and splashes, Bandit finally gives birth. Bingo comes out of his shirt, now smeared in white sunscreen to mimic a newborn's coating. Everyone cheered. Bandit collapsed in exhaustion, and the mom, Chili, casually declined to join the next round of play. Audiences generally praised the episode for explaining the mechanics of childbirth without traumatizing the target demographic. However, the reception in the US was different. When the distribution rights crossed the Pacific, Disney's Standards and Practices team reviewed the episode and panicked. They thought the birth scene was too detailed and worried that preschoolers might start asking uncomfortable questions. To prevent that from happening, they banned the entire episode from Disney Plus and Disney Junior. 4 years later, Bluey's creators uploaded Dad Baby to YouTube themselves, and it instantly blew up, generating millions of views without causing the societal collapse Disney execs predicted. While some people still argue that Dad Baby did more good than harm, and so it didn't deserve to be banned, there's an entry in Tier 2 that's so full of inappropriate innuendos that people are surprised it was allowed to go on air in the first place. Rude removal from Dexter's laboratory. If you missed out on the 90s, Dexter's Laboratory is about a boy genius hiding a massive secret lab in his bedroom from his clueless parents, while his annoying sister Dee Dee constantly wrecks his experiments. In 1998, someone on the team had a genius idea. What if Dexter invented a machine that literally removes someone's rudeness? The story is simple. Dexter invents a machine called the Rude Removal System, which he claims can literally suck the rudeness out of a person and trap it. His sister Dee Dee enters the lab and starts teasing him, saying he's the rude one. He fires back. She mocks him harder, and within seconds they're wrestling right into the machine. It activates by accident, and when the smoke clears, there are now 2 pairs of them. One set comes out overly polite, while the other set are super mean and, of course, rude. They stomp out of the chamber, yelling, flipping tables, and cursing like they were raised by sailors. They don't just swear once or twice. The entire episode is filled with bleeps. 13 in total. Every time the rude Dexter or Dee Dee open their mouths, another bleep goes off, including a few that are very obviously covering F-bombs. Everyone on the production team thought it was hilarious. The voice actors reportedly couldn't finish their lines without laughing, but Cartoon Network didn't share the enthusiasm. Executives approved the concept all the way through recording until they saw the final cut. It isn't shocking by modern standards, but you have to remember that in the 90s, things were different. Rude removal became a lost media legend for over a decade. But finally, in 2013, Adult Swim released it as a joke for the now grown fans who remembered the rumor. Mr. Skinny Legs from Peppa Pig. You usually expect governments to ban TV shows for violence or political propaganda. But that's not what happened here. Peppa Pig is a British show for preschoolers about wholesome family stuff. The show has been going strong for years, so you probably don't know that a season 1 episode titled Mr. Skinny Legs caused a national incident. The episode begins with Peppa and her little brother George playing with their dollhouse, setting up a pretend tea party for their toy family. Everything's going fine until George goes to the sink to get some water for the dolls, and finds a spider. It's small, black, with long thin legs and a cartoonish smile. Instead of being scared, George gets excited. He calls Peppa over and proudly shows off his new friend. He even puts the spider inside a dollhouse bed like it's joining the tea party. Peppa, on the other hand, completely loses it. She screams, runs downstairs, and hides behind Daddy Pig, begging him to get rid of it. Daddy Pig does what any calm, responsible parent would do. He explains that spiders are tiny and harmless, but when he actually sees the thing up close, he jumps back too, nearly dropping his glasses. Eventually, Peppa realizes there's nothing to be afraid of. She names the spider Mr. Skinny Legs, invites it back to the dollhouse, and even offers it a slice of pretend cake. By the end, the whole family is laughing around the table while Mr. Skinny Legs crawls towards them. That logic holds up fine in the UK, where the scariest spider you'll meet is about the size of a button. But when the episode aired in Australia, many parents lost it. Spiders down there can actually hurt people. The country is crawling with redbacks and funnel webs, species that can hospitalize you in minutes. So when Daddy Pig looked straight into the camera and said spiders are harmless, Australian broadcasters saw a disaster waiting to happen. In 2012, the ABC network officially banned Mr. Skinny Legs, calling it inappropriate for Australian audiences. Buffalo Gals from Cow and Chicken. Some banned episodes are subtle, some are misunderstood, and then there's Buffalo Gals. Cow and Chicken is a 90s cartoon about a cow and a chicken who are somehow siblings. They have parents who we see as two pairs of legs with no upper bodies. We'll just call them Mom and Dad. The show is weird enough on a normal day, but in Season 2, Episode 2, the writers decided to base an entire plot on a very specific adult slang. The episode starts normally enough. Cow and Chicken are home when a motorcycle gang of large, muscular women with short haircuts, wearing flannel shirts and biker gear, burst through their front door and immediately start chewing the carpet. The gang calls themselves the Buffalo Gals, and Mom identifies them immediately. She tells Dad to relax because they're definitely not interested in him. From here, the episode doesn't slow down. If anything, it gets worse. The gals play softball outside and start tossing around terms like pitching and catching. If you don't know 90s slang, these terms refer to specific adult roles in same-sex relationships rather than baseball positions. Later, one of the gals develops what seems to be a crush on Cow and invites her to join. Cow joins their gang. Chicken tries to save her. And through it all, every scene leaned heavier and heavier into jokes that went straight over the heads of kids. The narrator wraps things up by explicitly refusing to state the moral of the story. He basically tells the audience that if they don't get the joke, they're not old enough to hear the explanation. Behind the scenes, even the creators later admitted things went too far. The show's creator, David Feiss, talked about it on a podcast years later, saying the jokes were poor judgment, and the episode only made it through because standards and practices in the 90s weren't exactly strict. Cartoon Network aired Buffalo Gals once. After that, they realized they'd made a mistake and scrubbed it from the schedule. You can't watch the episode on streaming services today, but it survives on the internet thanks to people who hit record on their VCRs back in 1998. Pingu's Dream from Pingu. Pingu is a classic Swiss claymation show about a penguin who went viral with this meme. It is usually just him fighting with his sister or eating fish. But in Season 1, Episode 26, the writers decided to see how much trauma they could inflict on toddlers in 5 minutes. The episode's called Pingu's Dream, and it starts off at bedtime in the igloo. Pingu's mom tucks him in, reads him a story, and everything looks cozy and peaceful. But once Pingu falls asleep, the episode takes a sharp turn from cozy to uncanny valley. The igloo around him starts to shake. Then, without warning, it lifts off the ground and drifts away into the sky, leaving Pingu's bed sitting all alone in the middle of a frozen wasteland. The bed suddenly sprouts a pair of long, thin legs and begins walking across the snow on its own. At first, Pingu giggles and plays along, bouncing on top of it as it strolls around. It's strange, but still innocent, until something dark appears on the horizon. Out of nowhere, a giant walrus rises out of the fog. It is a huge tan creature with tusks, bulging eyes, and a grin that looks uncomfortably realistic. It doesn't walk or slide like a real walrus. It floats, slowly, until it's inches away from Pingu. Then it just lets out a deep, frightening laugh right in his face. The creature starts chasing Pingu, It eventually catches him and squeezes his head like a stress ball. Then it actually chomps down on the mattress and eats a chunk of it. Pingu eventually falls off a cliff and jolts awake in his real bed, panting and terrified. His mom rushes in and hugs him, trying to calm him down. The nightmare was over for Pingu, but for countless kids, it was only the beginning. The shock came from how suddenly the show changed its tone. Pingu was supposed to be soft, funny, comforting. Then out of nowhere, it gave children an eldritch horror show. Parents flooded broadcasters with complaints, saying their kids had nightmares or refused to sleep after they watched that episode. By 2003, the BBC quietly pulled the episode from UK circulation, marking it as too frightening for young audiences. It never appeared on VHS or reruns again, though it remained available in the US and later resurfaced on DVDs and Amazon Prime. Tier 3. Electric Soldier Porygon from Pokémon. Most banned cartoon episodes just offend parents and scare kids. This one actually put people in the hospital. Pokémon is a show where kids catch monsters and force them to fight for sport. This specific incident happened in Season 1, Episode 38, titled Electric Soldier Porygon. It aired in Japan on December 16, 1997. Ash, Misty, and Brock, the main characters, stop at a Pokémon Center, which is basically a hospital for injured Pokémon. But the building's teleportation system suddenly stops working. Nurse Joy brings in Dr. Akihabara, the guy who built the whole digital network, and he explains that Team Rocket stole his virtual Pokémon named Porygon, and they're messing with the system from the inside. Eventually, it's decided that Ash and his team will go to cyberspace and chase down Team Rocket. Inside the virtual world, everything looks futuristic and colorful. The trio rides a second Porygon through a neon blue grid filled with floating Pokeballs. They battle Team Rocket and their rogue Porygon, dodging digital missiles and fighting inside what looks like a computer's code. It's visually intense but still family-friendly, until Pikachu decided to use a Thunderbolt attack to destroy the antivirus missiles chasing them. The effect ran at 12 flashes per second, and even though it lasted only 4 seconds, that brief moment was all it took to spark one of the most infamous incidents in broadcasting history. Viewers began complaining of dizziness, nausea, and vision loss. Within hours, hospitals were flooded with children suffering seizures, fainting, or vomiting. In total, 685 people were hospitalized, with over 12,000 more reporting milder symptoms. Japan's media later dubbed it Pokémon Shock. TV Tokyo immediately pulled the episode, halted the entire Pokémon series for 4 months, and issued a public apology. News programs covered the incident, and in a moment of collective genius, they decided to replay the exact seizure-triggering clip on air, which immediately sent a second wave of viewers to the hospital. After that, the government stepped in, ran a full investigation, and introduced strict rules for TV animation. Rapid flashing images were banned, and every show now has to pass the Harding test so cartoons don't end up accidentally weaponizing the color red and blue ever again. Denno Senshi Porygon has never aired again, not even in its edited form. You can only find it now on illegal pirate sites or in medical textbooks about epilepsy. The fallout was so massive that the Pokemon responsible for the chaos, Porygon, was effectively blacklisted from the anime. Future seasons featured its evolutions, but never Porygon itself. See Me, Feel Me, Know Me, from the Powerpuff Girls. People don't usually connect kindergarten superheroes with philosophies like free will and totalitarianism, but Season 5, Episode 12 of the Powerpuff Girls tried to change that. Powerpuff Girls is a show about 3 little girls created in a lab who fly around and punch criminals in the face before bedtime. In the episode that got banned, the writers decided to swap the punching for singing. The episode See Me, Feel Me, Know Me begins with the girls completely worn out from fighting every villain in their hometown of Townsville. So naturally, they start singing about wanting peace on Earth. Right after that, a raindrop hits the ground and magically grows into a rose. And then, out pops a dramatic little gnome. He promises to eliminate evil forever, but only if the girls give up their powers. At first, everything seems perfect. The villains disappear, the sun shines non-stop, and the townspeople dance in the streets singing Sunshine Down on Me. However, the longer this utopia lasts, the stranger it becomes. Everyone is suddenly wearing the same clothes, chanting the same lines, and praising the gnome like he's their spiritual leader. This is the moment when Professor Utonium steps in. Through his song Freedom Beef, he warns that peace without choice isn't real peace at all. It's control. Realizing they've been tricked, the girls demand their powers back. This leads to a dramatic showdown filled with guitar riffs, energy blasts, and fast-paced musical strings. Eventually, the girls overpower the gnome. He sings a final emotional line and disappears, returning Townsville to its usual chaotic but genuine state. So, why was it banned? According to creator Craig McCracken, because of a misunderstanding. During one destruction scene, a wise old mystical elder character appears near steel beams sticking out of the rubble. The way the beams accidentally formed cross shapes made some executives think the scene resembled a Christian image, which is something the team never intended. To avoid potential backlash, Cartoon Network quietly shelved the episode in the US. Interestingly, it aired normally in many other countries, and fans worldwide praised it for its creative music and psychedelic 70s-style visuals. And this is still just a symbol that only kinda looks like something sacred. In Tier 4, we'll talk about an episode that fully dabbled into religious blasphemy and caused huge controversy. The Butt of the Jake. From My Gym Partner's a Monkey. You know an episode has really crossed the line when Cartoon Network looks at it twice, says, yeah, that's enough, and pulls it themselves. For context, My Gym Partner's a Monkey is a show about a human kid named Adam who gets sent to an animal school, thanks to a clerical error with his last name. His best friend is Jake Spider Monkey, who shows affection by making Adam's day objectively worse. Then Season 3, Episode 3 rolled around, and the writers suddenly chose violence. Jake became a menace, not just to Adam and the school, but to viewers' personal comfort levels as well. The episode is called The Butt of the Jake, and the whole thing revolves around Jake Spider Monkey becoming obsessed with his butt. It starts off light. Jake admires his butt in the school bathroom like it's a prized trophy. From there, he names each cheek like they're pets. The left cheek is Sally, and the right cheek is Buddy. Then he starts brushing them, moisturizing them, and even feeding them bananas he hides in his back pocket. Before long, this obsession is messing up his entire school day. In class, he makes it talk using ventriloquism. In the hallway, he parades it like it's a purebred show dog. Oh, and we're still talking about his butt. Adam is the only student at the school with human logic, so he organizes an intervention. Adam and the gang sit Jake down to explain that talking to your own butt is not normal behavior. But Jake gets defensive, declares that his butt is part of who he is, whatever that means, and storms off. Jake wants professional validation, so he goes to Dr. Babunsky, the school therapist, and for a moment, it looks like he might actually get real help, until the doctor proudly reveals that he named his cheeks too. Eventually, Jake's overpampering goes out of control. All that moisturizing and attention causes his butt to physically expand. It swells into a giant balloon that is big enough to block sunlight and casts a literal shadow over the school. He can barely walk. He slips, crashes into the courtyard, and face plants in front of teachers and students. Adam realizes the butt only grew because everyone kept looking at it. So the solution is simple. Everyone just ignores the butt. Without attention, it shrinks back to normal. Jake promises he's done with the obsession and immediately starts naming his elbows. Cartoon Network quietly pulled the episode soon after it was aired, calling it too vulgar for a TVY7 audience. Seeing how there are about a dozen butt jokes crammed into an 11-minute episode, they weren't wrong. Still, the episode aired normally overseas, and fans can find it on DVD. This proves once again that early 2000s cartoons tested boundaries that modern networks would never dare touch. Leapfrogs from Rocko's Modern Life. Most cartoons try to sneak one or two adult jokes past the censors, but the writers of Rocko's Modern Life decided to write an entire episode about a housewife trying to cheat on her husband. Rocko's Modern Life is a show about a socially anxious wallaby working retail and dealing with the stress of adulthood. But in Season 2, Episode 6, the writers took that stress to a weird place. In the episode titled Leapfrogs, Bev Bighead, Rocko's toad neighbor, is stuck in a loveless marriage with her grumpy husband, Ed. The opening scene sets the tone as Bev calls for Ed to come to bed while he's too busy waxing his lips and ignoring her. She flips through an old photo album, sighs about how their spark is gone, and even Cupid shows up to shoot love arrows at them, but gives up in frustration. That's the level of adult plot we're working with. The next morning, Ed leaves for work, and Bev spots Rocko outside raking leaves. The music playing sounds suspiciously like Mrs. Robinson, and if you don't know that reference, it's a not-so-subtle nod to The Graduate Show, which is literally about a housewife seducing a younger man. Bev walks outside and compliments Rocko's hard work, then lures him into her house by saying she'll pay him to fix things. From there, the innuendo ramps up disturbingly fast. Rocko tries fixing her VCR, only to discover that the tape inside it is a toad mating documentary. Pretty sure that's the cartoon equivalent of watching adult videos together. After that, Bev keeps coming up with excuses to keep Rocko inside. She pretends there's a spider in the bathroom so he'll come to protect her. From there, the suggestive imagery ramps up even more. Bev's red dress rips as she tumbles around, leaving Rocko frantically zipping his eyes shut in embarrassment while she flirts harder. She then asks him to rub her feet, which are so stinky that the smell launches him into the ceiling fan and shaves off his fur. After what feels like hours of harassment, Rocko makes a run for it. He grabs the door handle and tries to leave right as Ed Bighead walks inside. He walks in, sees Rocko disheveled and Bev half-dressed, and instantly assumes the worst. Ed explodes in rage. Rocko disintegrates from embarrassment, literally. Then Ed and Bev end the episode in a makeup scene where their tongues get stuck together in a sloppy kiss gag. It was supposed to be a happy ending, but it just feels like a really uncomfortable soap opera. After airing for the first time in 1993, Leapfrog slipped under the radar for a few years, until networks realized just how adult it was. By 1997, it was banned from rotation in the US, Canada, and New Zealand. It didn't air again until Nicktoons revived it in 2002, and even then, most channels avoided it completely. Beauty and the Beach from Pokémon. This Pokémon episode speedran every possible reason to make censors sweat, and became one of the earliest and most infamous Pokémon bans ever. The episode starts on a harmless note. Ash, Misty, and Brock arrive at a beautiful sunny beach resort. But it is a Pokémon episode, so naturally something goes wrong within the first 5 minutes. Ash crashes a speedboat into a dock owned by an old man named Mo. To pay for the damages, the group ends up working in Mo's restaurant, which is losing business to a rival restaurant named Brutella. So far it looks like a typical anime filler episode. Then the writers decided to make things uncomfortable. It starts small. Misty walks out in a bikini, and Ash immediately makes a snarky comment about her looking like a real girl. Misty nails him with a beach ball. Brock starts blushing, and the show just goes on. At first it sounds like harmless fun until you remember Misty is literally 10 years old. You absolutely can't get away with commenting on a child's body like that on television today. To raise money to pay off the boat damage, everyone enters a beach beauty contest. Gary Oak, who is Ash's arrogant rival, shows up with a squad of cheerleaders to mock them. Misty enters the contest herself and tries to win over the judges by posing alongside her water Pokémon. Team Rocket bursts in wearing goofy costumes. It is chaotic, but manageable. And then James, the male member of Team Rocket, walks out wearing a bikini with inflatable breasts. He strikes poses, shakes the breasts around, and literally squeezes a hand pump to make them bigger. Then he turns to Misty, a 10-year-old, and tells her she won't have a chest like his for another 10 years. In Japan, some people saw it as typical anime humor. Slapstick cross-dressing, exaggerated body jokes, nothing too serious. But in the US, the whole country was in the middle of a media storm regarding the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, a child beauty queen. The public was already debating the explicit exploitation of children, so a cartoon man mocking a 10-year-old girl's body was a PR nightmare waiting to happen. To make things worse, Mo's original Japanese line to Misty literally translates to, "I'll look forward to you in 8 years." 4Kids Entertainment, the company responsible for dubbing the show for Western audiences, changed it to something safer. But the original didn't help the episode's reputation. The rest of the contest doesn't get any better. There's more ogling, body shaming, and awkward comments that absolutely do not belong in a show aimed at 6-year-olds. After all that, Team Rocket fires a missile during the event. Ash orders his fire lizard Charmander to use a flamethrower attack to deflect it. Brutella's restaurant explodes, and Mo sails away to live his best retirement life. To avoid offending pretty much all of America, the US version was heavily cut, including nearly all the James content. Even then, it only aired once in 2000 before disappearing forever. It never returned to TV, it never appeared on DVD, and it's not on Netflix, Pokemon TV, or any official platform. Tier 4. One Beer from Tiny Toon Adventures. This episode called Elephant Issues was meant to teach kids important lessons. And yeah, it technically does that, just in the most unhinged way possible. Tiny Toon Adventures was basically the junior league for the Looney Tunes. Produced by Steven Spielberg, it followed the next generation of cartoon stars attending Acme Looniversity. It was high budget, frantic, and usually pretty smart. But then came the segment One Beer. The segment opens with the show's main trio: Buster Bunny, Plucky Duck, and Hampton staring into a fridge. They find a beer and Buster decides they should drink it to show the evils of alcohol. Hampton panics, Plucky shrugs, and Buster pops the cap anyway. From there, everything spirals. The second they take a sip, the animation warps. Their faces stretch, the shadows twist, and horns sprout. It kinda turns into an LSD acid trip. They burp in harmony. They suddenly grow beards, and their breath is so toxic, it sends their female counterparts, Babs, Shirley, and Fifi, running for their lives. And then comes the moment where every 90s kid collectively blinked and asked, are they allowed to do this? Plucky spots a police car parked outside a donut shop, with the keys still inside it. And the trio decide to steal it. Underage drinking? Check. Driving stolen property? Double check. Doing it while plastered? Triple check. As they speed off, they pass a giant sign that literally says, now leaving reality, which is honestly the perfect description of everything happening at this point. Buster makes jokes about drunk driving. Plucky casually admits he doesn't even know how to drive, and instead of hitting the brakes, they aim the car up a giant peak actually labeled Death Mountain. They blast through a danger sign, launch off the cliff, and crash straight into a graveyard and explode. Their little cartoon souls float up into the sky. Then, in the most whiplash-inducing twist ever, the characters stand up in angel outfits, peel them off, and basically go, hope you kids learned something. Drinking is uncool. The segment tries to work like an anti-alcohol PSA, but the tone swings between slapstick comedy, dark satire, and straight-up vehicular death. Parents hated it. Fox pulled the episode from rotation after one airing. Other networks only aired it occasionally, making fans think it was banned entirely. Even decades later, people still debate whether the segment was brilliant, irresponsible, or both. Supernova from Buzz Lightyear. If you watch Toy Story, you probably know this one. Buzz Lightyear is about Buzz leading a team of misfit cops against the forces of evil. It is usually pretty standard hero stuff. But in Season 1, Episode 12, titled Supernova, the writers accidentally turned a space princess into a full-blown drug metaphor. On the surface, it looks like a normal Buzz Lightyear mission. Team Lightyear is trying to stop a medical ship from exploding. The reactor is unstable. So Mira Nova, the team's rookie ranger with the ability to walk through walls, ghosts inside to fix it. She saves the ship, but the energy surge hits her directly, soaking into her body like radioactive adrenaline. At first, this new power is cool. She can phase faster, hit harder, and blow through obstacles. But then you notice something's wrong. Mira starts getting hooked. She starts craving the energy high. She sneaks off to feed on more power sources. Her skin glows, her eyes sharpen, and her personality gets snappy, reckless, and obsessed. Her father, King Nova, warns her that he went through the same thing when he was younger. Too much exposure, and the high becomes dependency. Buzz tries to ground her from missions, but Mira ignores him. She phases into power conduits across the city like she's chasing a fix, which she is. And that's when Zurg steps in. Not as a villain with lasers, but as a literal dealer. He lures Mira with promises of unlimited energy hidden on an asteroid. She falls for it and ends up trapped, begging him for more power in a scene that feels way too raw for a Disney cartoon. Team Lightyear eventually rescues her, but the chaos is far from over, because Mira starts fighting through withdrawal. She shakes, stumbles, and loses her powers mid-fight. It's intense for a TVY7 show. Eventually, she chooses to stop feeding on the energy, defeats Zurg, and reunites with her team. Technically, the writers claimed this was a story about power management, but anyone with eyes could see it was a 22-minute allegory for substance abuse. And that is why things got messy behind the scenes. Disney aired it twice, and then it vanished, and no one can blame them. It's Breaking Bad for kids. Executives saw the metaphor immediately and yanked it from US rotations. Flying Dupes from TaleSpin. Disney usually censors things for being too scary or too gross, but this episode was banned for being a tutorial for domestic terrorism. This is TaleSpin. The show took Baloo from The Jungle Book, put him in a bomber jacket, and made him a cargo pilot in a 1930s world. It is usually about pirates and wacky deliveries, but the writers decided to end the series with a bang, literally. The series finale, episode 65, titled Flying Dupes, begins when Baloo takes a gig from a shady client. He has to deliver a gift-wrap package to the leader of a cold, militaristic country called Thembria. Thembria is basically a cartoon parody of the Soviet Union where everyone is miserable and covered in snow. Baloo doesn't question the job. He just hops in his plane and goes. Meanwhile, we meet Colonel Spigot, a tiny, bossy officer who acts like he's important, but can't actually fly a plane. His dictator-like leader orders him to pilot an aircraft for a ceremony. Naturally, he panics, so Spigot secretly begs Baloo to teach him how to fly. Baloo agrees, thinking it's just another silly day on the job. But here's where everything turns on its head. While they're on the air, Baloo discovers that the gift in the back of his plane isn't a present. It is a bomb with a live timer meant to assassinate the High Marshal of Thembria. Baloo is not just a pilot anymore. He's an unwitting mule for an arms dealer trying to start World War III just to boost his quarterly sales. From here, the tone shifts fast. Baloo tries to get rid of the bomb. Spigot keeps messing up the controls. Thembrian soldiers chase them through the sky. And all the while, the timer keeps ticking. Eventually, in classic cartoon fashion, Spigot saves the day by pure accident. He fumbles so badly that he drops the bomb out of the plane, and it detonates harmlessly. The assassination plot is exposed, the bad guy is caught, and Baloo goes home thinking all's well that ends well. However, the executives at Disney were not laughing. The episode aired once in the US in 1991. The timing was catastrophic. It aired just weeks before the actual Soviet Union collapsed, and while the world was on edge about global conflict. Disney panicked. They didn't want a children's cartoon anywhere near themes of terrorism, assassination, or political conflict, so they trashed it immediately. After 9/11, it became even more untouchable. It stayed completely off American TV until a DVD release in 2013, and it's still not on Disney Plus today. And you know what? This isn't the only time Disney stirred up political tension between countries. They once managed to make Mickey Mouse offend an entire nation. We'll talk about that in Tier 5. Troubled Waters from Fireman Sam. This show was supposed to be putting out fires, but in 2016, the show accidentally started a massive political one for blasphemy. If you've never seen Fireman Sam, it's a British preschool show about firefighters in a small Welsh town. Every episode teaches basic safety messages. Don't play with matches, don't wander off alone, always call for help, that sort of thing. The tone is simple, cheerful, and designed for very young kids. In Season 9, Episode 7, titled Troubled Waters, the writers aimed for a standard rescue plot. The story focuses on Station Officer Steele and Train Conductor Gareth. They decided to take a day off and bring two local kids, Sarah and James, along for a boat ride. At first, it's harmless fun, but as soon as the two men started trying to outdo one another, their friendly competition spirals out of control. Because the adults are distracted by their egos, the engine fails, and the boat ends up floating helplessly toward the open sea. As always, Fireman Sam and his rescue team have to step in and fix the situation. Up to this point, the episode is completely ordinary, the kind of thing you'd expect from a kids show. But then comes the moment that sparked the international outrage. Roughly 2 minutes in, there's a blink and you miss it gag where Elvis, a clumsy firefighter, slips on loose sheets of paper and falls. The entire shot flashes by in less than a second, and most viewers never noticed anything at all. However, if you hit pause at just the right time, you'll notice that one of the papers Elvis slips on contains real Arabic text, specifically verses from Surah Al-Mulk, a chapter of the Quran. Because the text is upside down and mirrored, it looks like the animation team simply grabbed a random image file to use as a prop without realizing what it contained. You're probably wondering what the big deal is. Well, the issue wasn't the text itself, it was how it appeared. In the scene, the page flies up into the air and Elvis steps directly on it. Even if it was completely accidental, the resulting image shows a firefighter, who is the moral hero of the show, stepping on pages from the Quran, which is unacceptable. Once a member of the Muslim Council of Britain posted a screenshot on Twitter, the scene went viral within hours. News sites picked it up immediately. Parents were confused, angry, and demanding an explanation. The backlash forced the UK broadcaster and the studio behind Fireman Sam to make an official statement. They apologized, said the text was never meant to appear on screen, and ultimately blamed the third-party animation studio in China that created the CGI scene. They also cut ties with that studio and removed the episode from all UK streaming platforms within 24 hours. Today, Troubled Waters still exists, but only in corrected form. The original unedited version hasn't been broadcast since 2016. Flight as a Feather from The Mask. This is one of those kid show episodes you watch as an adult and go, hold on, this aired for kids? The episode is called Flight as a Feather, and it aired in 1996 during Season 2 of The Mask, the animated series. The show was a spin-off of the Jim Carrey movie. It followed Stanley Ipkiss, a boring, nice guy who finds a magical Norse mask that turns him into a green-faced, reality-bending chaos god. The episode begins with the mask practicing for a Swedish karaoke contest. He sings horribly, shapeshifts into various costumes, and blasts the music so loud the landlady starts yelling. Instead of apologizing, he ties her to a chair and forces her to listen to his mixtape. So right from the start, it's kinda disturbing. Soon after, the plot shifts to a lucky feather in his fedora. It blows out the window, and he bolts after it like his life depends on it. The feather lands on a pizza at a local pizzeria. The mask cuts the line and scares off the customer who ordered the pizza by literally unzipping his own chest cavity to show off his internal organs. It works. But just as he grabs the pizza, a skateboarder crashes into him and sends the feather flying again. The chase leads him to a public ceremony where Mayor Tilton is signing a business deal. Everything seems normal until the mayor's furious ex-girlfriend, Cookie Baboom, storms in wearing a trench coat. She throws it open and reveals she's strapped with dynamite in the shape of a bikini. She declares that no one dumps her and gets away with it, clearly ready to blow herself up and take the mayor with her. Now you'd think the mask would try to save everyone, but nope, he only cares about grabbing his feather, which the mayor is now holding. So he jumps in, puts a mousetrap on the detonator, shapeshifts into a bartender, and mixes Cookie's dynamite bikini into a cocktail that he gulps down. Cookie spins around, fully exposed from the back, which leaves the cop staring at her in shock while the mask slips away. From that point forward, the episode just keeps getting stranger. The feather drifts into a pillow factory, sticks to a bird, gets swallowed by a whale, and eventually ends up in an eagle's nest. Meanwhile, everyone the mask annoyed along the way bands together into an angry mob. When they corner him, the mask only escapes by distracting them with s'mores and catapulting himself off a windmill straight to his karaoke contest. Because apparently that's still his priority. By the end, the reason this episode was banned becomes pretty obvious. A children's cartoon suddenly included a stripper wearing explosives, a self-destruction attempt, an implied wardrobe malfunction, and plenty of violent slapstick. Networks realized quickly that this went far beyond what TVY7 was supposed to allow. While the episode itself still circulates, the character of Cookie Baboom was effectively blacklisted. Tier 5. The Barnyard Battle from Mickey Mouse. People usually associate Mickey Mouse with theme parks and copyright lawsuits. But in 1930, he managed to get himself banned by an entire nation for insulting their dignity. The episode is called The Barnyard Battle, and it's one of the earliest Mickey Mouse cartoons ever made. The shot starts with a barnyard alarm ringing as all the mice prepare to defend their home from an invading army of cats led by Peg-Leg Pete. The cats wear spiked helmets that look almost exactly like the German Pickelhaube from World War I, which already gives the whole thing a specific political flavor. Mickey rushes to enlist, only to get pushed around by the examiners. They stretch him, poke him, toss him around, and even weigh him with an anvil while he's standing there in his underwear. Once Mickey is accepted, the fighting begins. The short plays out like a chaotic mini-war movie with cannons, collapsing trenches, explosions, and mice and cats flying across the screen. Eventually the mice win, and they celebrate to the Battle Cry of Freedom, a Union anthem from the American Civil War. This is where the trouble really started. In 1930, Germany banned the Barnyard Battle. The government argued that showing German-coded rats getting defeated by tiny mice insulted national dignity. This was during the Weimar Republic, years before the Nazi era, and officials were already sensitive about anything portraying Germany as weak. After the ban, the relationship between Germany and Mickey only got stranger. In the following years, Nazi officials began publicly attacking Mickey as vermin. Yet Adolf reportedly owned Mickey films privately. German newspapers criticized the cartoons as degenerate, and the government kept a close eye on American animation from that point on. The ban on the Barnyard Battle ended up being the first sign that Mickey could cause political tension overseas. Outside Germany, the short still made people uncomfortable. Later releases often cut the physical exam sequence because it looked like Mickey was being bullied for comedy. Modern audiences also notice how casually the short treats war, which is why some streaming platforms trim scenes or add disclaimers today. Comedians from Beavis and Butt-Head. This episode didn't just get banned. It got re-edited, censored, blamed for a child's death, dragged into Congress, and turned into a prime example of the media is corrupting our youth in the 90s. Beavis and Butt-Head was one of the most controversial cartoons of the 1990s. It aired on MTV and followed two teenage boys who sat on a couch, watched music videos, broke things, blew things up, laughed at everything, and basically did every irresponsible thing you would not want an actual teenager doing. Adults hated it, teens loved it, and MTV leaned into the chaos. The episode Comedians aired in 1993, and at first it looked like typical Beavis and Butt-Head nonsense. The boys see a stand-up comedian on TV bragging about making money. And in their usual two-brain cell logic, they decided they want to do the same thing. They head to a comedy club called The Laugh Hole. Butt-Head goes on stage first. He bombs immediately. The crowd hates every second of it. Then Beavis tries. He freezes, looks around the stage for something funny to do, and notices a stack of newspapers. That is when everything falls apart. Beavis pulls out his lighter and sets the newspapers on fire while chanting, "Fire! Fire!" The flames spread fast. The whole club goes up in seconds, and Beavis and Butt-Head laugh like it is part of the performance. It lasts about 30 seconds, but it's one of the most dangerous scenes the show had ever aired. At first, MTV treated it like slapstick. Viewers shrugged it off as Beavis being Beavis. Then, everything changed. About 1 month later, in October 1993, a tragic fire happened in Moraine, Ohio. A 5-year-old boy accidentally set his family's trailer on fire with a cigarette lighter. His 2-year-old sister didn't survive. In the chaos that followed, the mother claimed the boy was obsessed with Beavis and Butt-Head and had been copying the fire starter behavior. That was all the media needed. Overnight, the narrative was locked in. Headlines blamed MTV, talk shows blamed cartoons, and Beavis and Butt-Head became the face of "TV is destroying our kids." MTV did not wait for the facts. They went into full damage control mode. They yanked comedians off the air immediately and banned it permanently. They also went through the entire series and scrubbed out every fire reference they could find. Beavis' iconic "Fire, Fire" chant was muted or dubbed over. Reruns were pushed to the 11 p.m. death slot, and MTV slapped a now famous disclaimer before every broadcast. Beavis and Butt-Head are not role models. Don't try this at home. But here's the cynical twist. When reporters actually did their jobs later on, neighbors revealed that the family in Ohio didn't even have cable television. It was physically impossible for the kid to have watched the show. Years later, the boy himself confirmed in an interview that he had never seen Beavis and Butt-Head and did not even know who they were. The entire controversy was based on a lie, but it reshaped the network forever. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.